Hey everybody, Eric here. Just a little bit of housekeeping like we do sometimes here on the show. Sorry it's necessary. I know you want to get to the guest, but just humor me for a few minutes. Anyway, this is your last chance to get tickets for the Thomas House for March 17th and 18th. We still have one big room available on Saturday for 3 or more people, and we've got a few rooms left for Friday, but tickets are selling out quick. So come join us this weekend, March 17th and 18th at Thomas House in Red Bowling Springs, Tennessee. For $125 a person, you get a private room for the night with your own bathroom. You get a key to your room so you can lock it if you like. You get dinner. You get to ghost hunt all night with myself, Medics for Paranormal, PPF Investigations, and our special guest investigator, Sin Schrader Hill, the awesome paranormal author and investigator. And you get breakfast the following morning. So really good deal for $125. Also, if you're interested in being a vendor at our Tennessee Haunts and Legends Expo at the Fairgrounds Nashville on October 21st, 2023, shoot us an email at tnhauntsandlegends@gmail.com, and we will get a vendor packet out to you if you're a paranormal team or you like to sell things. Just shoot us an email, and that's tnhauntsandlegends@gmail.com. On to today's guest, Mr. Lawrence Milano. Had a good conversation with him. Y'all enjoy. Thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. Join us as we dive into the history, hauntings, and high strange of the world to try to better understand the paranormal. I will be your guide. I am paranormal researcher and investigator Eric Freeman-Sims. Welcome to the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Unseen Paranormal. Today we're chatting with paranormal investigator and creator of MONDOdocs, Lawrence Milano. MONDOdocs is a YouTube channel focusing on the paranormal, explorations, cemetery safaris, and more. Lawrence has traveled around the country filming his experiences everywhere from the Conjuring House to Pennhurst Asylum and many other locations. You can find all of his documentary films on the MONDOdocs YouTube channel, and I'll have all those links in the show notes. Hey Lawrence, welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us today.
Hey man, thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, so you do all these documentary films on your YouTube channel, and it's pretty cool how you do them. I've watched quite a few of them and enjoy documentaries like yours that are kind of, let the audience make up their own mind. Here's what we experienced, and you decide whether it's paranormal or not.
Yeah.
But how did you get started in the paranormal and doing the documentary films?
Well, it's kind of funny because the channel actually started back in 2019. And the idea was to really focus on the more obscure side of Pennsylvania and New Jersey. Because I live in Pennsylvania. At the time, I was living in Pittsburgh. And I was like, well, let's do something. Let's focus on just the weird side of things. And we'll do some haunted stuff, some paranormal stuff here and there, and kind of see what happens. And, obviously 2020 happened and things began to shut down and so forth. So we're like, well, what can I do when things were shut down? So abandoned places, cemeteries, those kind of came to save the day when it came to running the channel. And it just kind of took off from there, started doing haunted places like Gettysburg primarily, and just been kind of doing haunted stuff ever since then. So, thanks to the pandemic, that kind of set the channel on its own little weird path. So.
Yeah. Did you have an interest as a kid in the paranormal growing up or anything? Or?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'm a big horror fanatic, so I grew up watching horror movies, and that includes like ghost hunting shows and paranormal shows and so forth. Like I've always been fascinated by the paranormal, and I think my first time really ghost hunting was back in 2006. And it's funny because a few friends and I actually tried making a YouTube channel back in 2006. I forget the name of it. I think it was like A Trip into Hell, something cheesy like that. And we went to a haunted lake, an abandoned former old insane asylum in the middle of the woods. Never went anywhere. Just we did 2 videos and that was it. So it's kind of funny, now many years later, here I am, back at it doing these wacky paranormal videos.
Yeah, and a bit longer, a bit more professional probably than back then.
Oh yeah, it's definitely it's a little more polished than editing in Windows Movie Maker like I did back in '06 or '07. But yeah, definitely a little more experienced than I was back then.
Yeah, and you went to school for filmmaking, right?
I did. I went to Point Park University in downtown Pittsburgh for cinema and digital arts. And I've been editing and filming my entire life. I used to make stupid Blair Witch rip-offs of my mom's VHS camera when I was younger. We lived in a really rural part of Jersey. So me and my friends would go in the woods and make these fake, horrible, just dumb little movies. But yeah, I've been filming my entire life, and I learned. I'm self-taught when it came to editing, and eventually went to college for it, and here I am.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love asking people how they got their start in the paranormal, because everybody's story is different. Everybody is a little bit different, just from their motivation to get into the paranormal and things that got them into the paranormal. Like you said, you kind of got thrown more into it with the pandemic, and I think that happened with a lot of people, because a lot of locations, with investigating, it's one of those things that you can kind of do and be social distance and not be around a lot of other people.
Yeah, I mean, I could, going to a cemetery is a pretty safe bet. You won't run into many people who are gonna get you sick. Yeah, I mean, I know a lot of people who, obviously benefited from 2020, but their platforms definitely skyrocketed because you're stuck at home. You're gonna watch, YouTube or TikTok. So certain content creators definitely took off during the pandemic, without a doubt.
Yeah. So with kind of getting your start investigating with doing your own films, how did you kind of learn to investigate? Did you go investigate with other teams, or just kind of have developed your own style?
Well, I did watch a lot of content on YouTube, and I guess I grew up watching ghost hunters and so forth on TV. But who I really learned it from were my friend Steve and Pam in Gettysburg. They owned a little ghost hunting shop there, and they own a haunted bed and breakfast in a town maybe 40 minutes south of Gettysburg. It's such a haunted ass location. It's so haunted. But I had an idea on how to investigate. But when I went to their bed and breakfast to do a video, to film, I really got to talk to them, and I watched Steve investigate a little bit. So watching them really kind of helped me become a better investigator. And just, surrounding yourself by other people, other investigators. I mean, I think the best way to learn is to surround yourself by other people who are into the same thing you're into, and just kind of take notes from them. That's why it's so essential to learn or surround yourself with people who create positive people, inspiring people. Because, at the end of the day, people inspire people.
Yeah.
And yeah, I would say definitely learned how to investigate from Steve and Pam, and, other people I tend to surround myself with. So, because you never stop learning from my perspective. From what I've seen and learned, you never really stop learning how to investigate. You always learn new techniques. And, I'm still constantly learning how to be a better investigator and how to better communicate with whatever is out there.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I started investigating back in the 90s before any of the TV shows and stuff. I didn't even know if ghost hunting was an actual thing. It's just kind of something me and my friends went and did at cemeteries and kind of sneaking into haunted locations that were reportedly haunted. And just kind of making it up as we went. Then the TV shows came out, and so you start seeing that different stuff. And then I got into, like you're saying, investigating with other people and seeing different techniques and different experiments to do. So yeah, I'm always experimenting with new things and trying to think outside the box to use different tools and things. And also from a scientific standpoint of trying to be more scientific, I guess, and take the human element out of some of the things to try to say, okay, well, like a pendulum board, for example. I actually bought a pendulum that traces in sand if you swing it around. And so taking the human element out of the pendulum and just trying to get them to move the pendulum through the sand, and so things like that. But thinking outside the box and incorporating some of that stuff into your own investigations. Yeah.
And I'm a pretty skeptical person. I'm actually a huge skeptic, which can annoy some people during investigations. But it's I think being a skeptic comes with the territory. I think it's kind of essential because not everything to be paranormal.
Right.
I'm skeptical of a lot of things, especially when it comes to paranormal equipment and Ouija boards and so forth. I like Ouija. Like, for example, I like Ouija boards. I like the lore behind them and the aesthetic of them. I necessarily don't believe in them. I don't think they're what people say they are. But I think it helps to be a skeptic during investigations, so you can balance things out. Because it's if you're in an old building from the 1800s or 1700s, for example, it's going to make noise. It's going to, you're going to hear knocking noises, knocking sounds. You're going to hear creaks because the building is settling. So I think so I try to, approach investigations with that mindset, that skeptical mindset, and be like, okay, we just heard a creak in the floor, but this building's also from 1845.
Right.
So is it paranormal, or is the building about to just fall down on itself? And that helps me at the same time to become a better investigator. And I hope, being a skeptic, that can help other people to become better investigators as well, to help them debunk certain things. Like, oh my God, did you hear a knock on the wall? It's like, yeah, it's windy out.
Yeah.
And just try to help other people learn, or acknowledge the fact that not everything is paranormal. But that's just a long-winded way of me saying, I'm a skeptic.
Yeah. No, I completely understand. I call myself a skeptical believer because I've seen lots of shit that I can't explain, and that is paranormal. I mean, I've seen, full body apparitions right in front of me that I can't explain, and I've taken pictures and even got EVPs and things like that.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's some things you cannot explain.
Yeah,
like some things like some EVPs are just clear as day.
Yeah.
Like Gettysburg is the EVP capital. Like if you want amazing EVPs, amazing anything, like go to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Like you're gonna get some insane results.
Yeah,
and my friend Michelle, everybody is so sick of the story because I tell it all the time. But I took her to Gettysburg, and she was so anti-paranormal, complete skeptic. And I'm like you, I'm a skeptic believer. That's a good term for that. I like that. And I took her to Gettysburg to spend a night at this haunted inn, and that changed her mind completely. Just went from 100% anti-paranormal to holy shit. Like what? Like why was there a woman humming from the bathroom? Why is a drawer in a vanity opening by itself? Just like that kind of shit you can't explain.
Right.
Like there's no way. Like it's so strange. So it's awesome when you can, you can debunk something. I mean, something so insane happens, and you're like, okay, no, this space is haunted. Never mind.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm with you on the equipment too. I'm pretty skeptical about most of the equipment and not believing that it's. I mean, because a lot of it was brought in not necessarily to detect ghosts, but to rule out things like EMF and things like that, and so. It's hard to think that, anything detects ghost. I mean, you can't prove it.
Yeah.
But also,
yeah,
the apps on the phones and things like that. But one of the things I found too is that people are receptive to you being a skeptical believer, especially when I do like public events. We put on a lot of public events where we sell tickets, people come investigate with us. But as long as you have a good explanation of why you're skeptical of things, then I think people are less likely to dismiss you because you have an educated argument.
Right.
Even if they believe, REM pod is the end all be all, I have an educated argument against that because I understand how it works and what it should be used for. And, the also, I guess the downfalls of it, because, like a REM pod specifically, you can have a walkie-talkie that'll make it go off. I mean,
I was going to say, couldn't like an ambulance or a fire truck drive by the house or a building you're in? Yeah. And I could set up the REM pod, or like you said, a walkie-talkie. Yeah. So like REM pods I like REM pods, but yeah, like they can go off from other things besides the paranormal.
Yeah. And then but I've had other instances with like REM pods specifically where on a full spectrum camera, I watched I'm not a big orb person either, but I watched an orb on the viewfinder float toward the REM pod, and as soon as it hit the antenna of the REM pod went off. And so I can't explain that. I'm not going to say it's a ghost.
That's pretty fun.
Yeah, or a spirit, but it's something that I can't explain. and I can't dismiss, okay, well, that was some sort of energy that floated because I watched it, and as soon as it hit that REM pod, it went off. But
it's really good timing.
yeah, it's a really weird coincidence.
Yeah, that's yeah. I'm not an orb guy at all. Like, I mean, now I'm kind of calm on it, but like early on, whenever someone showed me an orb picture, I'm like, listen, just stop.
Yeah.
Like what you're picking up, or their ring cam or the security cameras that pick up like orbs and so forth. I'm like, listen, you're picking up a bug or a dust particle that's super close to the lens, but look, it looks transparent. Yes, because it's super close to the lens.
Right.
It's gonna look like a round orb of energy, but really it's just a moth or a stink bug just kind of doing its thing, and it's super close to the lens. But then you have things like that, like you picked up an orb that went towards the REM pod, towards the antenna, and then the antenna, then the REM pod went off. That's interesting. That's pretty fun. I like that one. But yeah, most of the time, like orbs are just, I don't laugh when people show me orb pictures, but it's like, I don't know, guys. Like, just anything orb, I just dismiss.
Yeah.
Or especially when they're like, I think this picture, all these orbs showed up. Where were you? We were in the basement of this old Gettysburg's, Civil War hospital. I'm like, you're in a dirty ass basement from the 1800s
right.
that nobody's been down in. Okay, all right, fair enough. Leave it at that. Yeah, orbs are that's a fun topic.
Yeah, and my thing is, okay, I've seen orbs with my own eye before, not through a camera, like actually giving off its own light. And I've seen this other phenomenon. I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but it looks like the way sparks come off a sparkler, like in the dark.
Yeah.
I've seen them like sparkle. And I think, maybe it's just a discharge of static energy or something. It doesn't necessarily mean there's a apparition trying to manifest or anything. Maybe it is. I don't know. And that's my biggest thing.
Yeah, I think that's what people call that firefly sometimes. People report seeing like almost like firefly, like kind of like sparks, but almost like fireflies as well. They'd be like in a dark room investigating, and then they'll see some, kind of like that, kind of like sparks or fireflies a little bit, sprinkling in, across the room in the darkness. I've never experienced it, but I know people who have experienced it, and I always find that really interesting.
Yeah, I've seen it a couple of times at a couple of different locations, and I wasn't in like a completely dark room. You know what I'm saying? There was some light coming in, so I don't think it was like my eyes adjusting or whatever,
right.
When you're in kind of a basement where there's no light whatsoever. But yeah, it's an interesting phenomenon, but at the same time, I can't say that it was a ghost or spirit or anything like that. My motto going into haunted places, supposedly haunted places, is we don't go in to investigate a haunting, we go in to investigate stories of a haunting. Because until you experience something that you can't explain, you can't say one way or the other, you just heard stories of other people having experiences.
So I like figuring out different places in the stories and, kind of like, I guess determine if they're really haunted by who people say they're, being haunted by. Like, for example, the Pennhurst House in Gettysburg. There are stories about a young boy named Jeremy who haunts the bed and breakfast. And I've been there maybe 7 or 8 times now. And every single time we try to investigate the place, we always end up interacting with almost every other spirit in the house except for Jeremy. And there's so much mystery and there's so many stories that go with these places. And it's like, well, are these stories authentic? Did you establish these stories through investigating? But are they actually what they are? Is there a young boy named Jeremy haunting this place? And so it's interesting for me to go and investigate and try to figure out if these stories are true. Maybe there's someone pretending to be someone else. Like, I think the Shanley Hotel up in New York, I think I heard a story there, which if you've never been there, amazing place. The Shanley Hotel up in New York is one of the most haunted places you ever go to. There was a story of an entity that presents himself as a young boy, but I think they established that it was not really a young boy. It's an older male spirit who pretends to be a young boy to interact with you. So I think that kind of stuff is interesting, and I really enjoy that aspect of investigating, trying to go and see, I keep hearing stories about this and that. Let's see if this is actually true, and maybe we can get to the bottom of it. But, when it comes to video purposes, I really enjoy the fact that the viewer can decide for themselves. At the Conjuring House, for example.
Yeah.
We had the camera move by itself at the end of the night. We're in bed, it's just two of us in that room, and the camera's on the windowsill recording. It just like shifts to the left. And I want to say, everyone's like, are you nuts? Why could this happen? I'm like, well, my theory is the wind coming through the window, maybe. I don't know. I try to think of a logical explanation on why the camera was moving in the first place. I don't know. It's weird. I'm 50-50 on it.
Yeah.
I'm leaning towards that it was paranormal, but it's one of those things that it's so outrageous and so over the top. Because in most YouTube videos, you see the camera moving by itself. It's usually obviously pretty fake,
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't want people thinking that when they see that footage in my video, because it's so over the top. Like, the camera is moving. And I'm like, shit. What do I do? People are going to, so I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to say it's paranormal. I'll let people just kind of figure it out for themselves and decide if it's paranormal or not. Because even though I'm not 100% sold that it's paranormal, I may be leaning towards it. But like I said, it's just so over the top.
Yeah.
And so outrageous. I just,
yeah.
The skeptic in me finds it hard to believe, even though it happened in my own video.
Right. Yeah, and you know the conditions and all that. I've seen that video, and that's pretty interesting. And I like how you presented it too, because you kind of fast forward through showing y'all sleeping and stuff, and then the camera just in the middle of the night.
Yeah, because
moves. Yeah.
We were sleeping for a while.
Yeah.
So it's like, and I hate fast forwarding through footage too. I was iffy on that because it's like, well, usually when you edit stuff like that, people might think you're, setting something up to fake it, and it's like, I don't know. But like I said, at the end of the day, I want the viewer to decide, get their own thoughts, and back to themselves if this is something paranormal or not. But either way, that's a cool place. That was an interesting little location, and the Conjuring House is it's fun to go to for the novelty of it.
Yeah.
Based off the Conjuring movies, and it's one of the most iconic haunted locations in paranormal history. It's like the other super famous haunted house next to the Amityville house.
Right.
Of course, you can't go inside the Amityville house. The Conjuring House, you can. So it was cool being there. And it's an eerie feeling being there. And it's funny because, when the camera moved, we were sleeping, obviously. But, the next morning when I left, I was like, okay, that was cool. But, that was it. Nothing, we didn't experience anything really paranormal that night in real time, in person. The EVP we got when we were outside, what we think is a young child asking, are you a ghost? We didn't hear that in real time at all.
Yeah.
Nothing, the motion ball went off a little bit outside on the stone wall. But that was really it. So I was kind of like, all right, well, it's a Conjuring House, Is it haunted? Probably not. And then I look at the footage and I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, the EVP caught me off guard big time. And then when the camera moved, I was just like, there's no way. There's no way this is happening. But it happened.
Yeah. Yeah, the Conjuring House is one place that I've kind of really dove into on the show here. I was fortunate enough to talk to Andrea Perrin for nice. 3 hours, and had a great conversation with her about living there, growing up there, the real story behind it. And then Kendall and Vera Welton, they brought out the Sleepless Unrest documentary, and I had them on along with Brian and Rochelle, and got to talk to them about their experience living there for 2 weeks. And so, yeah, I've kind of dove into the Conjuring House, and I find it fascinating, especially because Andrea Perrin brings up a really good question when I talk to her, and when I've seen her on other interviews too, about are they the ghost or are we the ghost kind of thing.
Yeah.
And like you said, you got the EVP of the kids saying, are you a ghost? Well, maybe some sort of time slip is happening.
I'm so happy you said the words time slip, because I use that term all the time.
Yeah.
Especially when it comes to this kind of situation. Because what if this child is outside? Because the house is built in the 1700s, right? So what if this child is in the 1800s, just outside, hanging out, playing, doing whatever, and then here's a couple of idiots, hello, anyone here?
Yeah.
And that child is going to be freaked out, and I would be like, are you a ghost? Like, what is going on? Um,
Right.
so I think the time slip theory is definitely possible. I think that's what I believe in more than anything else when it comes to paranormal is the time slip possibility in the theory. For example, I was down in West Virginia, Point Pleasant, visiting the Mothman Museum, the Mothman Lair, and Sarah and I, we were visiting the Mothman bunkers at night. And these are just giant old TNT storage bunkers, like built into the earth,
Yeah.
like a giant igloo concrete like bunkers. They're pretty cool. So we were walking in filming, and I think we're in the last bunker, and we're ready to wrap up and just go back to the Airbnb and go to bed. And nothing happened, and there's no stories about anything paranormal besides the whole Mothman lore and legend. That's it. No stories of hauntings that I read or heard. So we get back to Pennsylvania. I'm editing the footage, and we're in the bunker. And we're walking, and I asked Sarah something, and then this and that, and you can, and there's like acoustics are really kind of wonky in the bunkers, but there's no real severe echo. So I asked Sarah something, and then it's silence. And all of a sudden, you just hear a man's voice saying hello, and it has like an echo to it, as if he's in the bunker with us.
Wow.
And it sounds like it's in a distance, meaning he's like on the other side of the bunker.
Yeah.
So when you consider the time slip theory, what if that man was a former military officer? Because those bunkers were used during World War II to store explosives. So what if he's just in the bunker, in 1940 something, before 1945, and just hanging out, just working, doing paperwork, and then hears us coming in, like, hey, blah 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 blah, and just hears weird disembodied voices, and he goes, hello. What if he heard us coming in, and then we heard him respond to us?
Yeah.
So that's and it's crazy. I don't know. That's a theory that I really want to deeply get into more and research more. And it's a theory that I really enjoy just reading about and just kind of concentrating on, because to me that makes the most sense.
Right.
Like, are we talking to a dead person, or are we talking to someone who's in another universe and there's some weird scientific time stuff going on?
Yeah, and I'm with you on that. I think that the time slip thing can explain a lot in the paranormal, not just with ghosts, but I think even maybe like Bigfoot and cryptid, some things like that, because there were big scary animals that lived before humans.
Oh yeah.
And so you get all these stories of Bigfoot just disappearing, and maybe it's because it's a time slip, and we're slipping into their time, or they're slipping into ours, and they were because we have all these ancestors that were primates that walked upright, that were big hairy animals, and so and so even Bigfoot could be part of that. I don't think there's one explanation for the paranormal, but I think the time slip thing definitely factors in heavily with ghost for sure.
I think so. And there's a Native American museum near me, and which is supposed to be haunted, actually. The staff there, they have stories. But you walk in, and it's like a very tiny little place, and they have a little section dedicated to Bigfoot, and how the Indians would see this giant Sasquatch-looking creature in the woods, and how tribes both on the East Coast and the West Coast would see the same figure in the woods.
Yeah.
The same giant hairy creature in the forest. So, it's possible that we are experiencing a time shift when it comes to this Sasquatch type creature. And, some say that it's, a more supernatural entity, or some say it's most think that it's an organic creature that we haven't discovered yet. I don't know. Bigfoot is fascinating. I do plan on doing a Bigfoot documentary sometime this year.
Yeah.
It's just it's an interesting one. And our friend that you want to do it with, the film with, he's a believer that Sasquatch is a more supernatural entity that has the ability to manifest into what we want to see, what we're familiar with. So what if there's some entity in the woods that's trying to manifest itself into a humanoid creature, something that we're, familiar with, and it turns out it becomes a giant hairy creature, and that's Sasquatch. I don't know. There's so many theories of Bigfoot, and they're all pretty fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. Bigfoot's one of the things I talk about on the show here, and have guests on kind of on both sides of the fence. I've had a guest on from the North American Wood Ape Conservancy, and they believe that it's a flesh and blood creature, just hasn't been discovered. And I think there's a good case for both. As far as like Native Americans, I know the Cherokee, because I live in Tennessee, and this is kind of Cherokee country, and they believe that the Bigfoot walks in both worlds. And so it walks in the spiritual world and the physical world. And they just kind of, it's one of those things that it was just, to them, it's just a fact that Bigfoot exists. It's not folklore, right. It's not myth, it's not legend. They just learn to live in harmony with Bigfoot. You know, we leave you the fuck alone, you leave us alone type thing. And they just kind of coexisted, but they believe that Bigfoot walked in both worlds. The world we can't see and the world we can.
What if Bigfoot is just like, what if he's just an entity that keeps everything together? What if the higher power, it's just Sasquatch who oversees everything?
Right.
Like, well, who created the universe? Well, maybe Sasquatch. Maybe he's the one that we all should look it up to.
Right. But yeah, getting back to Ghost, which I know is both of our kind of our fortes.
Right.
I like to go down rabbit holes, but but yeah, back to like the time slip stuff. I think one of the interesting experiments that I've seen was Nick Groff. He has a show, I don't know if you've seen it, but a show called Deathwalker that is online. Yeah. And in one of the episodes, he poses the question of time slips because he goes back to the same place where he's investigated before, like 3 or 4 times before, and he gets his own name coming across the spirit box. But it sounds like him saying his own name. And so he ponders the question, is that just when I was here before and said my name is Nick, did that imprint on the environment and then I'm getting it back through my own equipment when I come here again? Or is, the time running at the same time that I'm here now and I'm here in the past at the same time, and I'm really just talking to myself through a spirit box?
Well, I mean, when it comes to that kind of thing, I've heard of Nick Groff, and I've seen him popping up on social media a lot. And I think he was in Ghost Adventures, right, with Zach Bagans back in the day.
Yeah, he's one of the original from Ghost Adventures. Yeah.
Gotcha. I mean, with that kind of thing, I don't know. I'm pretty skeptical of spirit boxes and ghost boxes and so forth. I think it's one of those things where we hear what we want to hear, and if it's the same goes with EVPs, depending what it's recorded on. But if you hear something and you're not sure what it says, and then someone else says, it sounds like it's saying the words goodbye, and you listen to it back, your brain is going to try to pick up goodbye, and then when you hear it, it's going to sound like it's saying goodbye. That's not the case in all scenarios or situations, obviously. And maybe Nick Roth did hear his name being said through the ghost box. But with that kind of thing, I don't know. I'm pretty skeptical on that. But it's possible that we are talking to ourselves when we're investigating. It's like the whole theory with not to get kind of derail the convo from ghosts, but there's that theory of UFOs just being those from the future,
right.
Checking up on us, from the future, and being like, all right, well, where did we go wrong?
Right.
And seeing that from that perspective. But I don't know, it's weird. I mean, if I heard my own voice, actually, fun example. My friend Kristen and Sean, they were investigating at some home prison. I forget what it was called, but they did an EVP session in some tiny closet space. And Kristen has a dog named Frenchie. They were doing an EVP session. They're both pretty, professional investigators. So they're doing an EVP session correctly, normal, quiet, asking questions. And they were listening to the playback, and they hear Kristen's voice saying, like, Frenchie, her dog's name, in a very excited tone. But the thing is, she didn't say Frenchie during the EVP session. So they basically heard her voice during the EVP session calling out to her dog's name. Wow. But obviously the dog was not there. So that kind of thing is strange. So I can't explain that.
Yeah.
But so when it comes to hearing your own voice, maybe through a ghost box or spirit box, I guess that could be a thing that should be looked into further. Maybe maybe there's some weird times when we are communicating with ourselves in a weird way. I don't know. That's a strange one, and I haven't heard myself yet during an investigation or an EVP session. I'm not sure how I feel about that, but that's a fascinating one.
Yeah, I'm on the fence about spirit boxes. The one thing that kind of gives me a little nudge towards believing someone in them is doing the Estes method. And I don't know if you've ever done that, but just getting incredible results with the Estes method. You know, when I'm in a completely different room asking questions and the people who are listening to the headphones are answering them. And there's no way that they know what, and maybe that's not spirits. Maybe that's some sort of telepathy or something like that. But I just find that whole phenomenon interesting. And actually, about a month ago, we did an event at Old Stone Jail in Franklin, Kentucky. One of my investigative partners, Regina, she had two people doing the Estes method at the same time in separate rooms, and then she was in a different room asking questions. And those two people that had the headphones on had the same exact answers at the same exact time.
That's weird.
Yeah, and they were direct answers to the question. And so things like that I find interesting in doing experiments like that, because it's one of those things I think we get complacent sometimes with the paranormal, that we know what's going on, and then things like that just completely fucking blow my mind. Like, no, I don't have any idea, you know?
That's the best part. You think you know, it's like, okay, I think I have it figured out. I think I know.
Yeah.
I have experience what's going on here, and then something else happens. It's like, never mind. Now I have no idea. Which I think is why the paranormal is an umbrella term, because, you know, there's so many things that fall under the term paranormal. And that includes cryptids, that includes UFOs, you know, ghosts and so forth. It's like you said, it's not just one thing. Like, there's so many elements to it.
Right.
And yeah, the time slip theory could definitely be a big part of it, which I think it is. But there could also be other explanations to it as well. Maybe we are communicating with those who are deceased, as well as, you know, there's a time slip going on as well. Like, there's so many possibilities that could play into it. If you haven't heard of the lucid effect, it's basically, so I think you can make some, but there are these headphones, these headsets with like mics installed into them. Yeah. And you put them on and you can hear, like if you're down the hallway with this headset on, you can hear someone whisper from down the hallway. Like, it sounds like they're right next to you. Amazing, like, ways to investigate. And it's a good way to creep yourself out, especially if someone moves and it sounds like it's right next to you. Like, that's a great way to investigate. And just, I know we tried it at the Pennhurst House in Gettysburg last time I was there, and it was a few of us, and we had a few rooms occupied. I think we were the only ones occupying the building at that time, at that night. And my friend Kristen had them on throughout the night, and she would just like hear the craziest things. Like, she would be like, I hear whispers, but there's no one whispering. At one point, we're on the staircase leading up to the attic of the building, and the attic was a sharpshooter's nest during the Battle of Gettysburg. She's on top of the stairs. I'm in the middle. Our friend Sean's at the bottom of the stairs, and three others are in one of the rooms, and we're investigating, and we just hear a disembodied voice, like a woman going, like, just saying the word watch, like, watch. And it was the creepiest, one of the most unsettling disembodied voices I've heard.
Yeah.
But the most, like, amazing as well. And Kristen, she had those headphones on, and it sounded like it came up from, like, near her. So I can't even imagine what it felt like having someone right next to you with those headphones on saying, you know, watch. I would have shit my pants.
Right.
These things it's loud.
Yeah.
Like, I forget who makes them, but I definitely recommend getting yourself, like, if I find a link, I'll Facebook you. But, like, I definitely recommend buying those headphones, and just using them during investigations, because you can pick up so much weird noises and so forth. And if no one's moving and you're just silent and you have those on, like, it's like, trust me, you want to, if you haven't used those yet during investigating, you're going to want to, because they're pretty spectacular.
Yeah.
I think they're probably my favorite thing to use now when investigating.
Yeah, actually, I have a pair of headphones like that. I've never used them for investigating. They're actually for shooting. And the reason they have a microphone on them is because anything over, I think it's 70 decibels, it'll block out. And so when you're shooting a gun, it protects your hearing. And so it won't record. I don't know if the ones that you're talking about record as well, but
no, you gotta plug a recorder into the headset.
Yeah, but these I picked up at Academy for like $25, and it has the microphone on them. And yeah, you can hear squirrel fart 2 miles away.
Oh, yeah.
But when it comes to a gunshot or a loud clap, it actually will block the sound from you hearing it so that it protects your hearing while you're shooting guns. So
that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's good to know.
But yeah, I'll have to take those on investigation. I never thought about that.
Yeah, I recommend it. Like, you'll hear some weird shit, probably. Yeah, if everyone's sitting quiet and being silent, and you just sit there with this on, like the Chamonix Hotel up in New York, like, I've had those on. And I remember a few of us were investigating in the seance room, and I had them on. Actually, we had two headsets. I had them on, and my friend Kristen had a pair on, and we're just sitting next to each other listening. And nobody's really talking except for the building owner and someone else. Actually, no, it's just the building owner, Kelly. She's the only one who's talking. She's telling the story, and we have the headsets on. We're listening to her tell a story of whatever she's talking about. Meanwhile, you can hear a whole other conversation happen. Like, someone else was just talking. And we look out the room, and nobody was talking. So we look at each other like, what is going on right now? And it's like a conversation between like two people talking. And it didn't go for too long, but it was strange. It was weird. So I recommend taking those on an investigation. Trust me.
Yeah.
And I actually took them to a haunted lake nearby. So I was in the woods by myself with those on. And I sat by this little spooky haunted cave and just chilling, hanging out, investigating. And I put them on. And it's probably not the best idea to put this on, when you're in the woods by yourself, because you're gonna hear birds walking around, squirrels walking around.
Right.
You're gonna freak yourself out because you're gonna hear footsteps. At one point, I thought I did hear like whispering, but I don't know. Like, those things, using those in the woods that's a whole other beast. When you're investigating in a supposedly haunted lake.
What you've been to lots of different locations, lots of famous locations, but also locations that a lot of people don't know. If you're into the paranormal, you've heard about, like we were talking about, the Conjuring House and Pennhurst Asylum and places like that. What is your craziest experience at a place that people haven't heard of?
Oof, maybe I don't know. The craziest place that to go look at my videos, see where I've been. Well, the Conjuring House in Gettysburg. I mean, it's a pretty well-known place. I would say actually maybe the Hoover House in Williamsburg. That's the place that my friend Steve and Pam own. It's a big bed and breakfast. It was a former assisted living home at one point. It's weird. It's a weird place. The first time I ever gone there is by myself back in the spring of 2021, and I booked it on a Monday. So I had the whole place to myself basically. It was just me and the owner, Steve and Pam, and their little tiny dog named Chuck. I remember just going there and just being completely unsettled. Wherever you went in the place, you felt like you were being watched. People were just following you around basically. And there were stories like people being pinched, people, disembodied voices and reparations and so forth. And I'm like, okay, on my way there, I was kind of skeptical. I'm like, all right, well, I don't know this place. They just opened it, so there's nothing really online about it at that time. So, but when I got there, the whole thing changed. Like, I felt like I was being watched wherever I went. And I remember at one point, I was filming, getting some B-roll footage, and I was coming down the steps, and I just hear a man's voice just losing his shit. Like, fuck this, like, Jesus fucking Christ, cursing, yelling, carrying. I'm like, oh my God, what is happening? What did I walk into? And then I see Steve and Pam outside on the porch. And I'm like, that's not them, because they're outside. And the voice is deaf. That whatever I heard was coming from a room, maybe like 20 feet from me. It was like the kitchen area. So I'm like, what is going on? So I walk outside. I'm like, hey guys, did you hear yelling or screaming or cursing? Like, no. I'm like, that's strange, because there was definitely a man's voice in that, inside the house, who was cursing and yelling and, this and that. And it was weird. And that whole night was just strange. Like, it got some weird EVPs, and I don't think I slept at all that night. But that's my first time there. I've gone there so many times after that. Now it's just, it still has a little creep factor to it. Like, I get a little creeped out and uneasy here and there when I go there.
Yeah.
But now I'm just so used to it.
Right.
Whatever's there, I feel like it's, you get used to you as time goes on. But yeah, the 1912 historic Hoover House in Waynesboro, Pennsylvania. Great place, huge. The owners are fantastic, and they're very, iconic figures in the paranormal community, at least in the Gettysburg paranormal scene. But yeah, in terms of unknown places, maybe I think that could be the craziest. Or we got a weird EVP at this abandoned campground in West Virginia, in Harpers Ferry, West Virginia. It was a Yogi Bear themed campground, and it was a giant fiberglass Yogi Bear statue in the middle of this building. It's weird. It has really weird slasher vibes to the whole place. And it was me and a friend of mine who were walking through, and I was filming, and I did get an EVP of someone like whispering like "nope," and it wasn't me. It wasn't her. There was no reason why we'd be saying nope in the first place.
Yeah.
But I think that might be it. A lot of places we go to, we kind of expect, things to happen, and they're more well known. Like Pennhurst is obviously well known.
Right.
The Shanley Hotel is sort of well known. Like it's a pretty notorious location. Lizzie Borden House, which it's funny, the Lizzie Borden House, nothing really happened. We got some motion ball activity here and there, but if anything, this is cool being there because it's one of the most famous murder houses in American true crime history. So it was cool being there. But yeah, that's really it. Because been to the orphanage in Gettysburg, which is kind of a crazy place. But yeah, I would say the Hoover House is definitely it's getting more well known as time goes on. But when I went there back in 2021, they just opened up, and that crazy place.
Yeah, I'm hoping to at some point in the near future get up to the Gettysburg Battlefield Bash, and come hang out and check it out.
It's funny because Steve and Pam, they're the ones who organized that.
Yeah,
they're the host of the event. Yeah, they're great people, amazing people, and that's a great convention. I'm not a big convention guy, but the Bash is something I definitely enjoy going to. I went there back in 2021, went there last year, and we're planning to go again this year. And it's all for charity too, which is fantastic. But it's a great event for socializing, networking, and it's in Gettysburg, the most haunted town in America.
Yeah,
Gettysburg is a crazy place, and I know a lot of people want to investigate the battlefields and so forth, and I'm not really a big fan of that because you kind of know what you're getting, and it's just like I did a video on the battlefield back in 2020, like a walkthrough of like the most haunted fields in Gettysburg. And that's the only time I really had any interest in investigating the battlefields. Because if you get like results, great, but you know who you're talking to. You're talking to the soldiers who die in the field. You're walking, sacred ground essentially. You're walking the same field where thousands and thousands of men fell that were killed on.
Right.
I am more fascinated by the buildings and the different inns, the bed and breakfast and so forth, because there's a lot of mystery to them. It's like the Farnsworth House. Again, there's a lot of stories that go with that place. Like so-and-so haunts it. But like, do they haunt the place? Do they haunt it? Does this person even exist? Let's go and find out. So I like that aspect of Gettysburg. It's like the old buildings and trying to figure out who's really there. Like there's the Museum of Haunted Objects, for example, which was the birthplace of Jenny Wade, who was the only civilian to be, she was killed during the Battle of Gettysburg.
Right.
But she was born and grew up a little bit in that house, in that museum. Now it's a museum of supposedly haunted objects. We went investigating there. We did a video there, the three of us, and we think there's something there. We just don't think it's the objects that are haunting the place, or that are supposedly haunted. We think there's something else that lingers in that building. So once again, that aspect of it, trying to figure out who really haunts these buildings in Gettysburg, that's more fascinating to me than investigating, the battlefield.
Yeah.
So we know, there's not much mystery there. We know what happened. We know who's there. So I just kind of, my opinion, kind of leave them alone a little bit.
Yeah, do you know Mark Nesbitt?
Oh yeah, I've met him a few times. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I've had him on the show here, and we kind of did a really deep dive into Gettysburg, and he owns a haunted location there, and he's written lots of books about different stories and things.
I spent the night at his an old friend of mine. She was friends with the manager of his shop, his tour place in Costa Gettysburg, and upstairs is an apartment. I think that's where he used to live, and he lives nearby, I think. But that apartment upstairs of the shop is supposedly super haunted, and I think it is. There's some weird stuff that happened in that building, but yeah, no, he's if you want to talk Gettysburg paranormal anything, he's the man to talk to. Like, he's so rich with knowledge, it's absolutely insane.
Yeah, and I love hearing the history too, and he's all about the history, and it's kind of neat to talk to somebody like him who he's very well versed, because like you said, he owns the tour company too, and so he's very well versed in the ghost stories. But the cool thing is that he can tell you the history behind why that place may be haunted by this particular person, or and the actual facts behind maybe some of the hauntings.
And listen, you can't have paranormal without history. Like, you need to have some kind of history with it, especially when it comes to Gettysburg, or even places like Salem, a very historic town for tragic reasons. Which I went to. Have you ever been to Salem, Massachusetts before?
I have not.
It's interesting. It's a fun little town. We didn't do any investigating there. I mean, I'm curious to see. A lot of people claim it's a haunted town for obvious reasons, but the only place nearby that we really investigated was the Lizzie Borden house, which is kind of nearby, near Salem. Yeah, I'd be curious to, investigate somewhere in Salem to see what results we would get. But, to see if it's really maybe the other most haunted town in America.
Yeah.
But, obviously, when it comes to paranormal activity in that town, you have history that goes with it. Or for example, it's, I think a few friends and I were talking about recently, I went to Poland a couple years ago, back in 2013. I lived in Poland from October until December. And judging by its history, Poland should be the most haunted country in the world for obvious reasons, and I, had a chance to visit Auschwitz, the infamous camp of absolute hell. You don't hear too many people talking about the paranormal in that aspect of those types of locations, but if you did, you would have to incorporate the history of it. And I think that's one of my favorite aspects of the paranormal too, is the history with it. The history of, why Gettysburg is so haunted, and, and different World War II sites, not just camps, but other locations as well that may be haunted. Like, it's just, I don't know, history has a big role when it comes to the paranormal. I think a lot of people tend to forget that, or they tend to neglect the historical aspect of paranormal investigating. And they kind of just jump right into, like, well, let's figure out, this place is haunted or not. It's like, well, learn the history of it and figure out, why it may be haunted.
Right.
And, have an idea of who you want to communicate when you're there.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like I said, I think the history aspect of it is definitely one of my favorite things about the paranormal.
Yeah. And I'm of the same opinion, and I love, deep diving into the history before I go to a location and know not just the stories of the hauntings, but who you're connecting to. And also, I think it's kind of exciting that we're possibly talking to people from history, people who lived before us. And we, to connect in that way is pretty amazing. Even if we're not, but just the prospect of that's what we're possibly doing is pretty amazing. Yeah,
and you're right. And the fact that you could be talking to someone who perished, 100 years or more before that moment, it's a fascinating thought. Or even the time, once again, back to the time skip theory, the idea that you could be talking to someone or hearing someone's voice from a different time period when they were alive. Like, it's pretty remarkable. Either way, how you look at it.
So what do you have coming up for you and the MONDOdocs channel?
Right now, I'm planning to working on a documentary project, a short documentary on a oddity shop nearby that has a pretty decent-sized collection of haunted objects. So we've been in touch, and I should be filming there next month. We're going to Crescent, that old former insane asylum in Reston, PA. We're going to go there and investigate as well, also in April. And right now I'm working on a feature-length documentary called Beyond Death, which is a documentary about death. So it's going to focus on different points of grief, the industry of selling death, like oddity shops and so forth, and curio collectors and sellers. And of course, we're going to go into the paranormal aspect of it, post-mortem photography. So it's going to be a feature-length documentary project that focuses on different aspects of death in general. So that one should be interesting to do. Filming something next week regarding that. So that should be pretty fun to do.
Yeah, that sounds awesome. I'll keep an eye out for that for sure. That go diving into kind of the culture and folklore surrounding death. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, no, I'm pretty excited for it. The idea is to open up conversation about death because it's a pretty taboo topic for a lot of people for a lot of reasons. And the idea would be hopefully inspire people to spark conversation and just to talk about death and dying. In fact, we have a thing here called the Death Cafe, which is actually a pretty internationally known concept. So long story short, I'll keep it short. A Death Cafe is basically it's a meeting, it's an event, a very small, intimate event organized by people who are kind of maybe a funeral home or, another death care related facility. And what they do is they organize these events for people to come, and they're typically free to attend. And the idea is to sit around and talk to others about death and dying. I went to one a couple of weeks ago, actually, or last month, and it was fascinating. It was at a funeral home nearby, and maybe about 15 of us, if that. And we're divided up into two groups, and it was just me and three women, and we're just talking about death and dying. And of course, when they find out, like, oh, we need to go something, I'm like, yeah, a little bit. They're like, wow, and the whole thing just shifted towards, paranormal investigating, typical.
Yeah.
But I'm actually, that's what I'm filming next week, the next Death Cafe event. So that should be part of a portion of the death documentary is to focus on death cafes and how people handle and approach death and dying. So it should be interesting to film that, to say the least.
Yeah, sounds pretty cool. And everybody can check out your YouTube channel, MONDOdocs, and watch all the documentaries you got up there at different locations and places you've been. Yeah,
MONDOdocs is one word on YouTube. Most recent video we did was an abandoned cement plant, like in the woods. It was a creepy little place. But yeah, if you enjoy paranormal investigations, explorations of abandoned locations, check it out, man. It's a fun time. It's been a fun journey so far doing these videos, and I've learned a lot about investigating, and I learned a lot about myself as well and what I can handle. And doing these types of videos definitely challenged my own belief system, because you said before, we experience things that we can't debunk.
Yeah.
And we experience things that, that kind of changes our viewpoint. And it's like, holy shit. It's like maybe there's something out there we can't explain.
Right.
Maybe someday we will be.
All right, Lawrence, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, everybody, stay safe out there. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. Join us next week for an all-new, amazing guest. And in the meantime, please go on Spotify or Apple and give us a rate and a review. And go over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button. Also, if you would like to submit your story, you can email it to unseenparanormalpodcast@gmail.com. And you can remain anonymous if you like. Once again, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. Stay safe out there.